Hey you, and welcome to my channel. My name is Tina and my aim is to improve your drawings just like others have done for me when I just started out. Now 2 weeks ago I talked about how line art is so important if you want your drawings to look realistic. If you haven't watched that video and you are into realism, I suggest you go and watch that video. You can either click on the link that appears on your screen or first watch this video and then click on the link below in the description. Now back to this video. So like I said, I was talking about line art. Now as far as I am concerned, for me there are 3 ways you can get your line art down onto paper that will result in a good line art. Mind you though, this comes with a lot of practice. So the 3 types that I'm going to talk about are freehanding, the grid method, and lastly tracing your reference picture. So let me start with freehanding, since this is going to be short and sweet. Now basically freehanding is the ability to draw something without any other instruments than your pencil and paper or canvas, whatever you are going to paint or draw on. You guide the drawing process with only your hand and you depend on your observational skills for this. There is simply no way for me to cover this in depth in just a few minutes. It basically comes down to improving your skills on accuracy or improving your observational skills. You can pick out some reference points in your picture and use these as a guide to start and work from there, or you can use simple shapes to begin with and add details on top. The most important thing is to get your proportions right, because if those are off, you will never achieve a realistic outcome. Practicing this skill is the only way to improve, and there are no shortcuts. You just need to practice and train your eye. Then the second one, the grid method, is basically putting a grid over your reference picture, for example, a grid that has 5 rows and 5 columns. Then you divide the paper or canvas you are working on in the same amount of rows and columns. You then look at your reference and copy what you see in each square or rectangle onto your drawing or painting surface. This takes a lot of time for complex subjects like elephants with all of their wrinkles, for example, but it's a good way to make sure to get everything right. You can see that I used this method on the tiger drawing I made a little less than 2 years ago. Now when you start out with the grid method, you will have way more rows and columns than when you are getting the hang of it. Because in the beginning you might not be confident enough to use big squares with much of your reference picture in them. The more rows and columns you use, the smaller your squares or rectangles will be, the more accurate your drawing will be when you're not so confident. The less rows and columns, the more information there will be in one square or rectangle, and the more accurate your observational skills need to be to put everything in the right place. The tiger you see on the screen here was the first one I used the grid method for. As you can see, I used a lot of rows and columns. The second tiger you see was a 60 by 60 centimeter acrylic painting that I did last year when I was already much more confident with the grid method. As you can see, there aren't as many rows and columns on that one. The more you get used to this, the better it goes, and the less information you will need in your line art.
Here goes a video of me being awkward when I want to show you how I go about tracing when I'm using my laptop to trace on. When I have an image to trace that is bigger than A3 size, I just plug my laptop into my television with an HDMI cable and trace on my television. The great thing about this is that you can make your image as big as it needs to be on the television, assuming you have a large enough television, of course. Now the reason you see me going to my sofa is because that is the darkest spot in our home when all of the lights are out and the curtain is closed. This way I don't have too much light that makes it hard to see through the paper that I'm taping onto my laptop screen. On a side note, make sure that you are using a light tape for this, so that you don't damage your screen when you pull the tape off again. I use a painter's tape, the same one that I use to tape my paper onto my table when drawing. This tape is so light that it doesn't damage my paper as well, so make sure to look out for that. After your piece of paper has been taped to your screen, it's time to start tracing. Just go over the lines that you feel are necessary to make your line art suited for you. If you have to use 100 lines, that's good. If you only need 10, great. Just make sure that it's easy for you to understand. When I'm tracing, I use a pencil to go over my paper on the screen. Make sure not to press too hard here, as you don't want to damage your screen. And when I'm done tracing, I go back to my table to transfer the line art onto my pastel matte paper. I just tape down the piece of pastel matte and take out a color soft pastel that will show up on it, yet not too much. When working on the dark grey paper, I most often take a light grey soft pastel for this. As you see, I rub the back of the trace paper in with this soft pastel and make sure to smooth it out with my hand before putting it onto my piece of pastel mat paper. Make sure to tape this down too so that it doesn't move around when you're going over your traced line art once more. And then you just go over your traced line art once more. Because of the pastel on the back of this paper, it will press the pastel through onto the pastel mat underneath. I use a ballpoint pen so that I can clearly see where I have gone over it already and I don't go over the same line again, or not too much. Don't press too hard for this again, as you don't want to indent your paper with your line art, just softly but hard enough so that it presses through. And be careful when you take off your paper as well. Don't let it slide across your pastel mat paper, otherwise you risk getting too much soft pastel on your pastel mat because it could smudge. And that's basically it. Now you have your line art onto your paper and you can start adding the colors to make it come alive.
Now I know that tracing is a really controversial topic in the art world, as some do not see it as a way to transfer your line art and still be able to call yourself a professional or whatever. My opinion on this matter is, don't ever let anyone tell you that what you are doing is wrong when it comes to transferring your line art. You choose the method that fits you the most. If anyone has a problem with that, they can just click away from your channel or social media. I don't ever see the need to give someone a hard time over their technique, because it won't help them and it won't make you a great person when you criticize someone on their abilities. Just be kind to one another and let everyone do their own thing. It's not because we are all entitled to our own opinion that we need to share it with everyone. Think before you speak and ask yourself this question first. Is this going to help me or the person that I'm talking to? If the answer to that question is no, or you're not sure, then just don't say anything. Just on a side note, I'm really not interested in a big discussion about this topic in the comments as well, so keep the question in mind to ask yourself first before leaving a comment below. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate your support, as this helps to grow my channel and reach other people just like yourself. Hope to see you again next Friday, and in the meantime, have a great week.